Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon or good morning as the case may be. This is Bart Earl from Capstone, and welcome to the 5th week of our online developer training. We're going to start today by reviewing the homework that was due today and answer any questions folks may have had as a result of that, the homework and viewing the video for this week. So I'm going to start. David had volunteered. David, I'm going to unmute you. And can I make you presenter?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yep, I can.
Great.
Okay. So I'm going to make you presenter so you can share your screen, and you can tell us about your experiences with the homework for this week.
Okay, so basically the homework was related to the repeat fields, right?
Right. Well, that was one aspect of it. And let's start with that because that is the meatiest topic.
Yeah, so what do you want me to explain? Everything that I did or?
Well, let's start by, did you run into any issues, anything that proved problematical?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Although I have another interview that I'm doing for my organization.
Okay.
And I had an issue with this is not exactly related to repeat fields, but since we dealt with a date variable here in this example, I thought maybe I could bring it up and ask you a question about it.
Sure.
So basically what I had, it was another repeat field, and I had a date variable, and the interview is in Spanish because I'm from Puerto Rico and we're doing the interviews in Spanish. And I had the issue where the date variable, you know that everyone knows that you have the ability to set, I'm showing it right now, that you have the ability to set like an example of the format.
Right.
When the text will be merged. So what happens on the other interview is that no matter what date I input, the month always appears as the format is. Let's say in this example, it says September 10. If I put a date that says April 10, 2017, the day will be fine, the year will be fine, but the month will always say September.
What are you using? What are you using for a format? You're using September?
No, in that example, I'm using June.
Okay.
And since basically all the examples always had like June here.
Yeah.
I use June, and the weird thing is that it only happened on one date variable. I had like 5 other date variables in the whole interview, and they will display correctly, like perfectly. But on that single date variable, it will display the month as it appeared on the format. Has that ever happened to anyone? Yeah, always. I even cut a variable for another section of the interview and put it in that sentence, and then it started behaving differently. So that made me think that it was like a formatting issue with Word, maybe something I'm not seeing on the code. But
yeah, well, if you're using, I mean, you use September here. Normally you use June for the month as the format. And so, and I don't know, does this behave properly when you use September?
Yes, I changed the format to every month, and it behaved. It behaved. Here it behaves fine, and on that other interview, it behaves perfectly fine on every other date variable. It's just that one date variable on one of the sentences that behave differently. I don't know why. And I checked every single format and every single option on the field, and I put it exactly the same as in the other fields, and it always displayed the month as it appeared on the format. Everything was in Spanish, and the name it said June, even though it was not the month that I was
Okay.
inserting on the.
So do you have the month in Spanish or do you have the month in English?
I set the month in Spanish, and I also set in the options of hot dogs that it was gonna be in Spanish.
When you
Like
say
the
you set
general
the
options.
okay, where did you set the options to be Spanish?
It's on a section of hot dogs that applies to the software itself.
Oh, you mean LHI? You set it to be Spanish.
No, on the local here on the hot dogs instance in
Developer
my
options,
computer.
I think.
What's that?
Yeah,
It
here
sounds
in
like in
options.
developer options.
Yeah, I didn't know that there was a language option in here.
Not necessarily language, but in the display format. Are you seeing my computer right now?
Yeah, yeah.
Here where it says date display format, I inserted like in Spanish. I think that's what I did. But it was working fine the way it was. At the beginning, like everything was in English and it was working fine on every other date variable, but it was just on one of the date variables that it behaved differently for some reason.
Okay. Well, we may not be able to solve the issue here and now, but we could take a look at it offline. I can set up a time to look at it with you. One thing I will say is that if you want to support date formats in Spanish, that you need to use there are language codes for different languages, and you need to use those in order to support a Spanish date format. So
I think I did something with here the other fields. I will have to look at the.
Oh, you did the language? Did you use the language?
Yeah, yes.
You
I
did.
set it to Spanish. Yes.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, we'd have to take a look at it, I think, because it doesn't make any sense to me that the format would produce different, that the same format would produce different results with different date variables. That doesn't, something seems amiss there to me, but I'd have to really drill down and look at it, I think. Did you run into, in this template, did you run into any problems or anything that you have a question about as far as repeats are concerned?
No, it was great. It ran fine. I like the options, the scripts that you showed to us about how to choose R and S and shy on the children, the computation variables.
Right.
That was I like that a lot because in Spanish we have a lot of gender pronouns and verbs, so that helps a lot with the other interview I'm building.
Okay. Did anybody else have any questions about repeats? If you want to post something in the question pane or raise your hand, we can address that. I'm not seeing anything. So the other aspect of the homework was the custom interview, and I could ask David, did you work on the custom interview as part of the homework?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and did any questions or anything that problems that you encountered there?
No.
Maybe you could just, okay. So I see you've added your An image.
Yeah, the company logo.
Okay. And maybe you could just open the component manager and show us your interview.
Sure. That was the.
Well, you've got dialogue showing, so you want to. If you stop here for 1 second, in order to navigate immediately to the interview computation, if you click on the component file properties button, which is on the left-hand side, and then click on the interview tab, and that takes you, and then you can just open the interview right from there. Okay, so you've got all of the asks in there. And are you using in the template that you're working on yourself? Are you using a custom interview?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Did you run into any issues there?
No.
Okay. One thing I don't know if you've encountered it yet, but sometimes people like to use, and it doesn't change the behavior of the interview, but you can make if you have a long computation, including an interview, you can make it, you can do automatic indenting. And if you click on the button that says,
Here?
You know it, okay, auto format, exactly. Okay, so I don't know if you've encountered that or used that yet, but sometimes that can be helpful if you have some very complex logic in the interview. I'm going to ask if anybody else has any questions or ran into any problems doing the custom interview. Again, I'll ask for a show of hands or post something in the question pane.
I have one question, if no
Sure.
one else has one.
Yeah,
and
go
there
ahead.
was a computation, I think it was the one related to child or children. Let me see. Yes. Okay, so here you put child, like with the, how you say that, comillas, and you said on the quotations. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you said you put it in quotations because we want this to return, and it's not a variable; it's a text. It's text that we want the system to return.
Yes.
But where do you get that from? Like, logically speaking, why would I intuitively do that?
Okay. Well, the type of return is analogous to the type of value that the various variables represent. So, for example, a text variable, like the name of the child, for example, is text. A date variable returns a date, and a number variable returns a number. And so when you're writing a computation like this, anything that you want to be literal text, like the word child, you need to put it in quotes because it's not any of those other things. It's not a date, it's not a number, it's not a it's not a true false value. And anything that is pure text that isn't one of those other variable type or value types, then it needs to be in quotes. If you wanted to return a number, for example, if you wanted to return count children, which if you only had count children in this computation, that would be a number value. That actually returns a number, not text. You would not put quotes, normally not put quotes around that, because you actually want it to be a number type. In other words, HotDocs recognizes it. HotDocs is sensitive to the type of value that's being returned. If it's expecting text, then it'll give you an error if it's not text. If it's expecting a number, it'll give you an error if it's not a number, and so forth.
Okay.
And you can convert any other value to text. For example, if you just had count children in this computation, and you put chevrons around it, and then you put quotes around it, it would return a text value. It would be returning the number of children, but it would be returning it as a text value. In other words, the value is not, you can do
something like this.
Well, you'd have to have quotes. Yeah, you'd have to have, if you did with that with count children.
Count children. Yeah, okay.
It converts, the number to a text value.
Okay.
So you'd have to have parentheses around children so that it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
So there's not like an expression that would say like this, like return, and then I write something.
There is a value. It's called result.
Result. Okay.
Yeah, result. And I think we might have used that. I can't remember, but we might have used that. We used that somewhere. And result basically returns the result, but you don't. You can't instruct hot docs to return a particular type of result. You can't tell hot docs.
Okay. That was
you can't say, hot docs, please return a number, or hot docs, please return a text. Hot docs looks at your computation, looks at the script, and it determines what it should be returning based on that. So if you, for example, if you put child in quotes at the top, and then you put count children, which is a number, it will object because it first encounters the word child and says, aha, I'm supposed to return text. Then it finds count children and it says, wait a minute, this isn't a text value, this is a number value. I'm not, I don't know what you want me to do. So it can't return mixed results. It can only return one type of result. And you can test on result, and you could even set the result to a value, but you can only set it to a value, not to a type.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I just thought that since I'm writing, like how to write the script in the script, like here I say if this and if, maybe I thought that there was like an expression model that was said return child if count, and if not, return this. Like more like a like we talk.
Yeah, you could do it that way. So you could say if count children is greater than 1, children, else child, and end if.
Okay.
So that's just another way to do it. What Hot Docs does with a computation script is that when you have an unconditional value in the script, like the word child, basically Hot Docs says, okay, I'm going to return child, and then it encounters the if count children is greater than 1, and it says, is this true? Yes, it is. Okay, I'm going to return children. So what Hot Docs does in scripts is it replaces the value, if it already has a result, which is in this instance would be child, it replaces that result with another result. So it's linear in the sense that as it goes down through the script, it replaces an existing result. So you could have a whole bunch of different if statements here, each one substituting something else. But it can't be, you don't want to ever have it so that it doesn't return a value at all, because that's unanswered.
Okay, got it. That's great.
Yeah. Again, did anybody else on the call have any issues with the interview computation?
See, Valencia has her hand up, Bart.
Okay, so let's, I will, and she's now unmuted. So Valencia, why don't you go ahead and tell us, ask your question or make your comment.
Hi, how are you? Yeah, I just had one question. So we use an if statement to insert is or are, and then a computational variable to insert child or children. So that was two ways of doing the same thing, right?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Go ahead. Yeah.
Is one better than the other? So we could have used a computational variable for both or an if statement for both, but what would be better practice, or is it personal preference?
It depends. Generally speaking, it's better to use a computation if you're going to be doing the same thing, if you're going to have that same logic in multiple places. So for child and children, it almost always is going to make sense because there's going to be almost inevitably more places than one where you're going to say either child or children. For the is and are, that might well be a computation as well, but it's really, the question is reuse, and we have today in our monthly developer support call, we're going to be talking about reuse. I don't know if you plan on joining, but this will be part of the topic that we cover is reusing and not reinventing the wheel, basically. Because if you have a computation that returns a value like child and children, you can always just insert it, and it's a little bit more complicated to have logic on the face of the template. So if it's the only downside of using computation is that if you're only doing it once, it may kind of clutter up your component manager with a lot of computations that you don't really want to be bothered with because you're never going to use them again.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Do we have other questions or comments about today's homework? So the third topic of the most recent video and in the homework was the publishing your templates to LHI, and the video covered that in fair amount of detail. It's not a complete tutorial on how to upload and publish, etc., but it did cover preparing your templates for upload to LHI, and there wasn't a lot of homework around that. It was just enabling your template for use on LHI. I take it that you did that, David, on your
Yes.
Okay. Did you have any questions? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, and open it up. So, and we also covered the various items on this tab, which governs behavior of the template on LHI. And I don't know if you had any questions about that or any of the other material that we covered in the video.
Well, now it occurs to me a new question, which is, as you saw, I have my local copy of hot dogs. I have it set up so that it looks like this, these colors. Yeah. But whenever it's uploaded, it changes this formatting. Is there a way for the LHI server to retain the font, the colors that I'm using here?
There is not. Basically, once you upload your template to the server, it uses the server's formatting. There's a cascading style sheet that's associated with the Hot Docs interview, and it uses that. There are a limited number of things that you can control. For example, you can control the size of some of the fonts, with using dot codes, but in general, you can't, the colors are not something that you can control.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I understood. Yeah. But just asking, just in case.
Okay. And did you have any other questions or comments around that, the uploading to LHI or preparing your templates for LHI?
Not well. The other day I did a focus group with a disabled blind person. He's a professor.
Yeah.
And he told me that when the document downloaded, the Word document, the system, his screen reader, was reading it in English, even though it was in Spanish. And I don't know if that has something to do with the server, the way the Word document is saved.
Yeah. So he's using a Spanish version of Windows.
No, he has an English version of Windows.
Okay.
But Word, even though the document it's written in Spanish, it seems like the system was telling his software that the Word document was in English.
Okay. So, and does he use Word? Do you know?
Yes, he does.
Word. Okay. So there's a setting in Word where you can set the language, and I'm trying to remember where it is. I'm not sure I remember where it is, but it may be under. I'm looking at this, trying to remember where it is, but there's a setting. It might be on the home. It might be on home. I think it's under proofing. Something to do with proofing. So there's a setting in Word. I can't really come up with it right away, but there's a setting in Word where you can set the language of the document. Oh, wait a minute. Go to language. Okay. So if you can set the you can make the language here Spanish rather than English, and if you do that, then when the document is opened in Word, Word will treat it as a Spanish document, and for example, it won't flag all of the Spanish text as being misspellings because it'll use the Spanish dictionary. So if you're doing documents in Spanish, that's probably something you want to do. It may result in it objecting to the hot docs scripting as being not Spanish, but that's not something you really have to care about.
Okay, but I would have to enable the keyboard layout because I use the English keyboard layout. I don't like the Spanish. I don't even use the Spanish keyboard layout.
Yeah, it's not the keyboard layout. It's the it may be the next item down where it says choose display language. It may be, I believe it's somewhere on this screen, and it definitely has to do with English.
Spanish.
Spanish and any other language that you might want to create documents in. But it's a Microsoft Word issue, but it can be remedied by setting the proper, I think it's the proofing language that you need to set. And then I'm not familiar with screen readers, but my guess is that somehow it's related.
Okay, I'll play with that.
Yeah, if you hit OK now, you may see it. No, okay, you don't want to do that.
I'll do that later.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, if you change the language to Spanish in the document, you will see that, and you run the spell checker, you'll see that it recognizes Spanish as, it checks the spelling as if it were Spanish rather than English.
Yeah, the other document I had it recognized that it was Spanish, and it was not telling me that things were wrong and like thinking it was English. The system here, it said Spanish. That's why it was weird.
Yeah.
He told me about that, about the setting in Word, but I saw that the proofing was in Spanish, so then I thought maybe it had something to do with the server.
Yeah, I believe that the server passes all of the Word. Is this a docx template or an RTF template? If you go back out to the library.
This is, I think it's docx.
Okay, so if it's a docx template, it should pass through all of the Word settings to the assembled document. All the properties of all the document properties should come through. I'm not aware of any document properties that get wiped out when it's assembled in the server, because I believe that HotDocs uses a software part that Microsoft makes for, that publishes, that is used for creating docx documents. It may be with RTF that there's different behavior. That's something I just don't know. But with docx, I'm pretty sure anything. So it may be, you may just have to investigate and find whatever it is that the screen reader is looking at. Maybe a little bit of research there. But I don't. I'm pretty sure you should be able to control it with the properties of the document, the original template.
Great, thanks a lot.
Yeah. So other questions that folks might have about publishing to LHI or preparing their documents? I'm just looking for raised hands and questions in the question pane at this point. Anybody have questions or issues with the material that we've covered previously in the previous sessions that they want to bring up? I know some people may not have been able to get to the earlier homework, so I'd be happy to field any of those questions at this point. And I'm not seeing anything. While we're waiting for, and again, if you have a question or a comment, or you want to, even if it's not related to the homework, if you want to just bring up a general question, please raise your hand or post it in the question pane. But while we're waiting, I just want to make sure that, I know that sometimes there's a little bit of confusion about what session, what homework relates to what session. So I'm just going to bring over the page from the Pro Bono Net site, and our next call.
Not seeing your desktop, Bart.
Oh, sorry.
Let me stop here.
Yeah, let me make myself presenter. Okay. So hopefully people are seeing.
Yes.
Seeing my, let me just get this out of doc control here. So I'm just going to, for some reason, I can't shrink the webinar panel, so I'm just going to move this so people can see it. So today is the 25th. Our next call will be a week from today. The homework that you need to do is for the next call is here on this page. It says Materials and Homework Week 5. And I want to mention that we did something a little different with the recording for next week's call, the recording that you're going to view after today's call. We actually reused our recording of the same call from a training we did in 2016. So you'll find it a little bit different from the recordings that you've been actually been seeing up to this point. And next week we'll be reviewing the HotDocs material from the homework that you're about to do. And then the week after that, there is some additional homework and we'll be covering that. And then the final 2 calls will be turning over completely to Jessica for covering A to J6. So we've got 2 more calls after today, which will be strictly hot docs related, and then there are 2 A to J calls.
Isn't it just 1 call after today?
Yeah, I think that's
October
only 1.
2nd?
Oh, 1. I'm sorry. Yeah. When do we recover?
Yeah.
Do we have homework for we have no hot docs homework, in other words, next week?
We do, right. This is the last hot docs homework, week 5.
Okay. Okay.
So, which we'll review next week, and then we'll start the A to J homework for week 6. Is the idea.
Okay.
Yep, and I'll have all the videos and anything related to the A to J homework ready by next week's call. So you'll have all the links you'll need by next week for the 9th and the 16th, which are A to J classes.
Okay.
And the A to J homework is, the hot docs homework this week is pretty light compared to last week. So we could also use a volunteer again or 2, somebody who's willing to do what David did today and show your screen and raise some questions or experiences. I'll let you elicit a volunteer, Bart. That's so much fun.
Okay. Yes. Well, again, as Mark said, it's pretty easy. So if you want to take an opportunity to be a volunteer, this is the easiest volunteer role yet, and you get a chance to easily be a hero. Anybody who would like to volunteer to do that, raise your hand. And I'm not seeing anybody, but maybe we'll just call on somebody next week. So since it's pretty easy. And I'm not seeing anybody.
Don't all volunteer at once.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're good, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I think we're all set for today.
And at 2, we're gonna be logging into another call where we're gonna talk about some other hot docs features that are a little bit more advanced. So if you have time or save the time, you can join us. And we're gonna record it and post it also. If for some reason you cannot join us at 2.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.